Hey, AP Lang students, this is Kevin Steinhauser from Fiveable, and I'm glad you're with us today. Today we're going to go over multiple choice. I went over multiple choice last week pretty thoroughly, and this is part 2 of multiple choice series to kick off the year. Next week we're going to jump into a very thorough multi-week series on rhetorical analysis and how to write an effective rhetorical analysis essay. So I'm glad you're here tonight. Please stick around for the end where I will be able to tell you all about the way that Fiveable is going to work this year in terms of making sure you can be a part of the weekly live sessions. And if you can't make it to the weekly live sessions, not a big problem. You can watch the replays at any time. Hopefully you find last week's and this week's live sessions valuable, where when it comes to May, you'll want to just refresh yourself on how to read multiple choice passages really successfully and apply your reading strategies to this really tough reading test. All right, so with that said, let me talk just for about another minute on kind of what we're going to do this year through Fiveable. So every Tuesday night, I will be going live at 7 o'clock Eastern. And like I said, I will be jumping into rhetorical analysis, reading with an analytical mind, starting next Tuesday. And it'll take us really through October, really focusing on rhetorical analysis. So I really hope you can be part of Fiveable for the long term, not just kind of in and out, but as often as you can, watching these weekly live reviews every week. This will really help you with rhetorical analysis starting next Tuesday. So for tonight, we'll focus on multiple choice, but I wanted you to know what was coming. All right, so for multiple choice, some of this I went over last week, but today I really want to focus on some more test-taking strategies. And we're going to do another practice round looking at an older AP multiple choice passage from an old released exam and really applying what I talk about here together. So again, AP language is not something we can cram for. So I'm really glad you're here from the get-go, from September, and really making sure you're deliberately increasing and improving your skills as a reader and as a writer. So full-length multiple choice. In May, you will take a 60-minute 52 to 55 question exam. Usually they've been about 55 questions, so it's just safe to plan for that. And the multiple choice section is 45% of the exam score. So it's something that you can't study for. There's really no secrets. It's just something I'm going to walk you through, like the best approaches in terms of a reader and as a test taker today. And it's something you deliberately practice all year long. So again, I'm glad you're here from the get-go, so we can practice together tonight. You can watch this replay like maybe a couple times throughout the year, but really practicing what you read in class at a high level, applying the strategies that I talk about tonight. Okay, so this is some strategy. The first minute of the AP test, you're stressed, you're like in the moment. Breathe, take a minute or so to make a game plan. So this is what I mean when I say make a game plan for multiple choice. First, look at how many passages and questions there are. I would assume there's going to be 55 questions, but double check just so you can have an eye on the clock the entire time. Every time you answer a few questions, look up, am I taking too long or am I right where I would want to be? You'll get a feel for that this year as you continue to practice. Second, how many passages are there? There's going to be 4 or 5. Usually there are 4, but just double check. I don't want you to assume there's 4 and then be like, oh crap, there's a whole nother passage with like 12 questions left at the end. So just plan for taking the first minute to make this game plan. I'm thinking there's going to be 4 passages and 55 questions. That's been the trend of recent years. But you just want to take a minute to double check so you can make sure when your eye is on the clock, you are calculating what you should be calculating. Are you on track? Okay. Determine how much time you have per passage and determine the order in which you have, which you're going to tackle the passage. When you look at how much time you have per passage, this is what it is. There's usually been 4 passages. That gives you 15 minutes per passage. If there are 5 passages, hopefully they'll be maybe a little bit shorter. You'll have less questions with them because you only have 12 minutes per passage. So that's really important. If I have 12 minutes per passage, I've got to go at a very, very brisk pace. Honestly, I have to do that either way. This is meant to take all 60 minutes. If you ended early, think about how could you have better spent your time. Likewise, if you don't finish, think about how you could have better spent your time. I hope you're thinking about that as you're practicing this year, in class or on your own. Hopefully you're taking some timed practice sets so you really get a feel for a sense of urgency. What do I have to do to read at a high level and answer every question in 15 minutes? Assuming it's 4 passages, that's how much time I have per passage. All right, then the next thing is you figure out what order you want to take this test in. You don't have to start at 1 and end at 55. It's totally up to you. If I'm taking this test and I'm super confident in I'm going to get to every question, and I'm not going to let that really tough passage that I know is going to be on there take too much of my time, then start at 1 and go to 55. That way you don't have to worry about Scantron errors and all of that as much. But if you always are one who is like, I really am struggling just to finish on time, maybe with each passage or just when I get 4 passages in a row, I think it makes a lot of sense to start with what you see for you will be the easiest passage and then ending with the hardest. Usually there's one passage on this test that is harder than the rest. Here's how I can determine the text difficulty at a glance. The year of publication. The older the text is, oftentimes the harder the text is. If I have to read something from 1800, I know that's going to be pretty difficult. Second, the organization of the text. I can skim through and look at it. If there's one big paragraph that lasts 80 lines, that's going to be tough because the author did not indicate as clearly the shift in tone or topic. So when there's paragraphs, the author's indicating to us there's a slight shift. When there's not paragraph breaks as frequently, as a reader, I have to those shifts. So maybe I'll save one that's making me do more of that work for later. The goal is to answer all 55 questions and to read every word of the 4 passages. However, if I am not consistently able to do that, it makes sense to make sure I'm getting the questions right that I know that I can get right. Finding the easiest question on the easiest passage, getting that right. Now, I'm not taking too long on that, but I'm prioritizing those questions. Every question on this test is weighted equally. So if I have 55 questions, it makes 0 sense to spend 1 minute or more than 1 minute on a very hard question. Maybe I can spend a minute and a half on one I know I can get right. But honestly, it doesn't make sense to spend 3 minutes on one I know I can get right unless I happen to have 3 minutes to spare. Honestly, I'm going to give you some time goals today to really use as you practice. When we practice today, we'll build up our skill. I'm not going to give you a timed reading, but obviously, hopefully your teacher or you are finding time to time yourself with readings and questions. All right, this is an optional step, and I say this with caution. I actually thought, should I even include this on the slide or not? So some of you might want to say, okay, I'll hear you, but I don't want to do that. Optional step is to skim through the question stems before you read the passage to further guide your reading. Here's my caution. Don't do this. Honestly, it's not that crucial step. This is the least important step. That isn't going to work for everybody. Do not do this. If you're finding yourself being tempted to be like, oh, I remember that was in question 3, or that was like lines 20 to 23 were about question 3. I don't want you to go back while you're reading, flipping back and forth. So maybe it gives you a better sense of your reading. But what I'm finding is a lot of students don't even need to look at the questions first. Some people like to do this. That's fine. Figure out what works for you. But what I don't want is you flipping back and forth while you're reading. That breaks up the reading. I want you to read to read. I want you to read to comprehend. I don't want you to read to answer questions. So think of each passage as chunked into 2 halves. I'm going to spend half of my time about reading and understanding the text. And then I'm going to spend whatever time I have left answering the questions. And then I flip back and forth at every single question pretty much. But I have to make sure I'm not breaking up my reading. These passages are going to be tough. So I want to make sure I'm going all in on just understanding the passage. What you'll find is this is really a reading test. It's an analysis test. The College Board creators of this test are making sure you really get the nuance of the argument that you're reading. But honestly, you will get a 3 or a 4 and even a 5 if you guarantee yourself the time and you can read at a quick, high sense of urgency pace and understand this text completely. So that's our goal here. as we read. A lot of students that I meet want to flip to the questions and like skim through and like look for where the question's being addressed. That's never going to work for AP. You'll get some questions right that way, don't get me wrong, but you are capping yourself and you probably won't even get half the questions right that way in the allotted time. This test is not meant to skim and pick and choose. This test is meant to read, understand the reading, and then answer the question. All right, so again, how to approach every multiple choice passage. Now that I've determined what order I'm going to take this test in, a lot of you might say, I'll just start at the beginning and try to get to the end. There might be others who say, okay, I'm going to find the easiest passage and then go to the second easiest passage and save the most difficult for last. Because if I have to guess on 5 questions, I'd rather have them be from the hardest passage. Now, once I've done that, do this for every single multiple choice passage. Step 1, read the background information provided. The practice that we have today actually doesn't have that, but in 2019, when we take this test, every passage will have like 1 or 2 sentences at the top, often it's in italics, that tells you about the text. College Board expects you to read that, and in fact, that's there to help you out. We know every text that you read is going to be relatively difficult. This is a reading test. It's a college level reading test. So please read that background information. That's to help you kind of ground yourself before you even start to read. Before you read the first word from the author, read the context that College Board provided and start thinking critically about it. Start thinking, okay, if it's 18th century and it's about, let's say, women's rights, what might this text be about? What might it be about if it's written by a woman, or a man? How might those two things be different? So I'm already just thinking, okay, whatever this is about, what might this text be about? What might it be arguing? Second, I've been focusing on this and stressing on this in my classroom. I mentioned it earlier. Read to comprehend, not to answer questions. Of course, you're going to be answering questions, but don't even worry about the questions while you are reading. Worry about a high level understanding and comprehension of the text. All right, and then step 3, read with a pencil. This was what last week's live session was entirely about. Annotate. I'll talk a little bit about that, especially if you missed the live session last week, or just as review if you were with me last week and this week, of how we annotate and why we annotate. Now, the ideal time to complete steps 1, 2, and 3 is 8 or 9 minutes, and that's assuming this is a 15-minute process. So it's assuming you have 4 passages that you're dealing with. So a little bit more than half the time. Now, obviously, if you're like, okay, that took me 6.5 minutes to read, go to the questions. Keep moving at a very brisk pace. But if you took 8 full minutes to read this passage, you will be in good shape. You're going to have to go quickly through the questions and know when to cut your losses and guess so you can get to every question. But you're fine. The time that you are putting into reading is an investment into your time during the question. If you spend 8 to 9 minutes, honestly, a lot of these questions you can answer in 30 seconds if you have that high level reading of the text. All right, so I went over this last week in the live session. So if you missed it, please go back and look at that replay too. That'll be valuable as well. Why do we annotate? We annotate because we've all been there before. We get to the bottom of the page, we weren't kind of into the reading, maybe because it was hard, or maybe just because we weren't in the right frame of mind, we were zoning out, and we have no idea what we read, or we have a little understanding, but there's a lot of misreads that we did. You couldn't tell your teacher what you just read, or your friend what you just read. So annotations, read with a pencil, keep you engaged. If you get to the end of a paragraph and you haven't annotated, okay, pause. Did you understand that paragraph, or were you zoning out? It's not because you're not a good reader. That's just a problem every reader faces. Are you focused enough? Are you holding yourself accountable to the text? Second, annotations will actually save you time. This is the pushback that I get from a lot of students. Well, I only have 15 minutes per passage. I've got to go. I argue that reading with a pencil and annotating the right way will save you time. Obviously, it's going to take you an extra minute maybe to get through the passage if you every paragraph pause and take 10 seconds to underline and annotate. But that is an investment in the question round. When you're answering questions, you're going back to your annotations. You don't have to reread the very difficult text again. Just reread, okay, what was that first paragraph about? I wrote it in my own words very quickly, just a bullet point. And therefore, I don't have to read this harder text. So annotations will keep you engaged, and honestly, more importantly, they will save you time. They will hold you accountable to the text, and they will help you through the multiple choice round. So again, how do I annotate? We'll practice this again tonight, and then again next week we're moving on to rhetorical analysis. So tonight we're practicing a different text, and we're going to annotate together. I'll model the annotations. I just want you thinking through it. But here's what I'm annotating. Keeping it simple. Annotate for you, not for your teacher, not for me, not just because you know it's the right thing to do, but what is actually going to be helpful for you. So 1, underlining key phrases that will anchor you in the text. 2, bracket every chunk of text. Now again, every paragraph break indicates it's a shift in topic or tone. What we'll look at tonight is split into paragraphs. There might be times though within a paragraph that I identify or you would identify as an advanced reader. Okay, there's actually a slight topic shift here. I'm annotating for that so I don't have to go back and reread and remember, okay, crap, where there was a shift here, but where was it? So I'm bracketing and then I'm bullet pointing what's worth remembering about that section of text. And then lastly, I'm clarifying vague pronouns. Every time I see the word it, he, she, etc., they, etc., I want to just make sure if that wasn't obvious, I'm pausing, I'm comprehending. I actually just draw a line back to the antecedent. An antecedent is what the pronoun refers back to. That helps me a lot on the question and answer section. I don't have time to read an entire paragraph again. I really don't. I have time to read it once well. And if there's a tricky pronoun, I'm taking 2 seconds to track it with my pencil, so I don't have to take 30 seconds to remember and reread what it was. Okay, now we didn't talk about this last week. Some more test-taking strategies. Once you spent 8 to 9 minutes conducting steps 1, 2, and 3, reading to read and annotating, spend the last 6 to 7 minutes, answering the associated questions. Once 15 minutes is up, you'd want to hustle and move on to the next passage. Don't take more than 15, maybe 16 minutes if you know you can get a couple more questions right. 15 or 16 minutes per passage. Just remember, 4 passages equals 15 minutes around. So if you take 60 minutes on one, you're already at a negative for the next one. You're already down to 14 minutes. So ideally, 15 minutes, eye on the clock, you're moving on. Your proctor in May will not tell you, hey, it's been 15 minutes, you should move on to the next passage. So it's very important. You get that internal clock going. You look at the clock, you look at your watch, whatever you've got, and you're just hustling through this, but hustling it the right way. Not stressed in terms of, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know the best way to approach this test. Just a healthy level of stress of every minute counts. So I'm spending 6 to 7 minutes answering the associated questions. And honestly, if you do a high-level reading of the text, there's going to be a few questions, maybe a tone question, maybe an overall purpose question, that you can answer in 30 seconds or less. Think about what your answer is. Circle the one that best aligns with what you're already thinking. There are going to be a lot, though, of questions that cite back to the text. Every time the question references a text, go back to your annotations. Now, College Board actually is friendly. Every other page of multiple choice is going to be the text. They're going to recopy the text to save you time flipping back and forth. I actually think that you should flip back and forth anyway. So here's why. I annotated the first page of the reading. Let's say so on the right, let's say it's questions 1 to 9. And then you flip the page, and on the left side, because it's a 2-page packet, on the left side is the reading again, and then let's say it's questions 12 to 20, like whatever. Half of the questions are on the page before, and then you flip it, you see the text again, and more questions. If the last question references line 50, go back to line 50 of what you annotated. Always flip back to your annotations just to save you time. Then quickly reread the context around the lines that are cited. So if line 20 is cited, look at your annotations. What did you bracket? What is line 20 about? Just remind yourself. What did you underline in that area? And then just quickly look back at the beginning of the sentence, start there. So if there's this random word cited in line 20, but the sentence starts in line 19, go back to the beginning of the sentence, read that sentence again in its entirety. That takes you 5 seconds because you've already thought about it and read it at a high level. You're like, oh yeah, that's what this sentence was about. And then go back, figure out again, guys, what do I think the answer is? Before I look at A, B, C, D, E, and then just plug and place, finding which one of those answer choices best aligns with what I had as the answer in my head. That's the way that we save time here. So you're actually thinking about it, and you're not letting the language of A, B, C, D, and E get in your way. Test-taking strategies to continue here. AP language expects you to use process of elimination. I don't care if I'm just going to guess. I don't care if I get it down to 3. That's better than just blindly guessing out of 5. So A, B, C, D, E, that's 5 different choices. Blindly guessing, I have a 1 in 5 chance. The moment I eliminate an answer, I'm down to a 1 in 4 chance. If I can eliminate 2, I'm down to 1 in 3. Hey, that's not ideal, but that's better than 1 in 5. A lot of times this is what's going to happen. You're going to easily and quickly cross out 2 or 3 answers. You'll be down to 2 maybe. You'll have a 50-50 shot. There's going to be 2 that are super, super close. Just to be clear, there is always a right answer and 4 wrong answers. But a lot of times there's going to be some overlap of, okay, answer A and answer C are very, very similar. If I'm in the moment like, to me, these are exactly the same, I have to take my best guess and move on. But just to be clear, a lot of times you hear like test strategists or teachers say, and this is what they mean, but what they say is, okay, there's 2 or more right answers, choose the best answer. Well, in AP language, what that means is, hey, there might be 2 or more answers that are partially right, but there is something wrong about 4 out of the 5 answers. There's only one that's right. So when I say choose the best answer, really what I mean is choose the right answer. Choose the one that is right all the way through. There might be an answer choice that one word disqualifies it from being correct, but then it's the wrong answer. So that's what we have to work through. Okay, so second test-taking strategy here. When you're out of time, and this is not ideal, but it might happen, especially as you take a summative or like a midterm, that's a full-length practice. If you're out of time, guess with the few remaining questions you have. It shouldn't be more than a few. Every time that you guess, use the same answer. That's just like a proven test-taking strategy. If you put B 5 times, statistically, one of them will be right. If you put A, B, C, D, E, now you're just scattering yourself. You could, number 1 might have been B, and you put A. So just choose the same answer and guess with it every time you have to guess. Ideally, that's a blind guess. Ideally, you don't have to do that at all. You might have to guess on some, but you're processing and you're eliminating answers. Okay, it's time to practice. So what I've chosen here is, let me get it up for you, a 2018 practice round. 2008, my bad. This is from 2008. Last week in the live session, I chose a different one from this exact same prompt. So today I'm going to go quicker through, because we spent more time up front talking about strategy, and really that's just up to you to like process it, come back to the replay if you forget it, take some notes, but really what it's about, it's not about memorizing strategy, it's about applying strategy. So today I'm going to go quicker through the text, but we can't go any further if we don't read the text in its entirety. Go ahead and just think with me, okay, how would I be annotating here? Again, annotations are to save us time, and they are to hold us accountable to the text. So as I annotate, I'm underlining key phrases. I'm bracketing as I see shift in topic or tone, and that's to save me time as I go back to multiple choice. So we'll have time today to look at some multiple choice questions together. This is a valuable live session to watch the replay for. And remember, again, at the end of today's session, I'll tell you about how to make sure you can be a part of all of the live sessions and replays as we go this year. AP Lang is all about practice, practice, practice. What we want to guarantee is that we're not cramming this skill in April or May. We have to start practicing now. This is not a class that we can just automatically spend 5 hours in and get better at. The 5 hours have to come in increments, and we have to practice deliberately over the course of the year. All right, so with that said, let's jump into this text multiple choice passage from 2008. I'll read it. It's up to you to stay engaged. I know it'd be easier if you had the text in front of you, but for our purposes, see how I annotate and then we'll look at some questions together. My point is this. What I'm doing in about 12 minutes probably today, you have to do in about 8. So it's doable. The reason I'm taking longer is I'm kind of explaining as I go why I'm annotating. But I'm going to go faster than last week. What I really want you to think about is this. If I put the time in up front to understand this text, I will get a lot of the questions right. So let's go ahead and read. Oddly enough, while several explanations are advanced as to how Charles Parker Jr. became known as Bird, Yardbird in an earlier metamorphosis, none is conclusive. All right, super random topic. We're talking about Charles Parker Jr. Every time you see an asterisk, and what you probably see this year is not an asterisk, but a number for a footnote, pause and find that footnote. It might be at the bottom of the page. This one's not, so then it's at the bottom of the text. So here's the asterisk. Charles Parker was an American jazz musician and composer, 1920 to 1955. He was the developer of bebop. That's there to help us out. So this is a really random topic, but every time you get to a footnote, pause, like finish the sentence, that's fine, but then go read that footnote, get right back to it. So our random topic of the day is Charles Parker, the jazz musician, founder of bebop. Here's what I annotate. I'm not underlining every single word, even in a very important sentence. I'm just underlining the key phrase that I can go back to ground myself. While several explanations are advanced as to how Charles Parker Jr. became known as Bird, none is conclusive. No explanation is conclusive. Okay, I'm not sure where we're headed, but I know we're talking about Charles Parker and his nickname, Bird. All right, let's keep reading. There is, however, overpowering internal evidence that whatever the true circumstance of his ornithological designation, don't let that get in your way, it had little to do with the chicken yard. Okay, this is, honestly, AP threw this at you in 2008. Say, okay, this is a really random topic, and the next few sentences or lines are going to get really weird. What are you going to do with it? So I'm going to show you what to do with it. Don't let this weirdness get in your way. There is, however, overpowering internal evidence that it had little to do with the chicken yard. It is his nicknames. This is what I meant when I said tracking vague pronouns. It is his nickname, Bird. I'm just drawing a line back to it. I got it now. That was actually not that hard. But when I go back and reread, I don't want to have to figure that out again. So it, Bird. Let's read another sentence, and I'll tell you what to do with this like really random sentence here. Randy roosters and operatic hens are familiars to fans of the animated cartoons, but for all the pathetic comedy of his living, and despite the crabbed and constricted character of his style, Parker was a most inventive melodist. Okay, I don't even know the sentence, but I know this is not as important as this. Parker was a most inventive melodist. In birdwatchers' terminology, he was a true songster. That's what I'm going to take away here. Parker was Bird, that was his nickname, and he was a songster or a melodist. Now, what do I do? What do I do with this really random sentence here? Randy roosters and operatic hens are familiars to fans of the animated cartoons. Bad news, I'm not familiar with that. What do I do? But for all the pathetic comedy of his living and despite the crabbed and constricted character of his style, blah, 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 skip it. This is not super crucial here. What I'm taking away before I continue, we're trying to figure out why Charles Parker Jr. was named Bird. Parker was a most inventive melodist. That's all I need to take away. He's referencing something that honestly we probably don't get. This was written about a time, remember when he was born or when he was alive, 1920 to 1955. This was written in 1954. I'm not getting what he's throwing at me right here. College Board expects that. Hey, if you get the reference, more power to you. College Board's hoping you don't, honestly. That's why they chose this text. This text is going to throw a lot of red herrings at you. That means there's going to be some things that seem important, but like, don't let that get in your way. Get to the core of the text. So keep that in mind. Let's go to paragraph 2. We're looking at Why was Charles Parker called Bird? Again, not a fun topic, not necessarily, right? You might like it, but College Board's not trying to entertain you for sure. They're giving you random passages at times to see what you can do with them. Can you comprehend them still? So let's read. This failure in the exposition of Bird's legend is intriguing. Oftentimes I find myself underlining topic sentences. Before I even finish the sentence, I'm pausing. What's this failure? So I'm going back to the paragraph above. So this failure is talking about not being able to find his nickname. There's no conclusive, there's no conclusive answer here. We're not 100% sure. So I might just draw a line from failure back to that right there. There's no conclusive evidence, or there's no conclusive consensus here. Okay, now let's read and actually finish this. This failure in the exposition of Bird's legend is intriguing, for nicknames are indicative of a change from a given to an achieved identity, whether by rise or fall, and they tell us something of the nicknamed individual's interactions with his fellows. Okay, they tell us something of the nicknamed individual's interactions with his fellows. So now he's jumping into talking about nicknames and just kind of theoretically talking about them. Nicknames give us insight into the person. Thus, since we suspect that more of a legend is involved in his renaming, let us at least consult Roger Torrey Peterson's field guide to the birds. So he's consulting a field guide about birds to figure out, okay, why was he called Bird? So let's consult this field guide for a hint as to why, during a period when most jasmine were labeled cats, someone hung the bird on Charlie. Let us note, too, that legend originally meant the story of a saint, and that saints were often identified with symbolic animals. Okay, seems random. I definitely look at a shift here, though. So first he talks about nicknames, and they reveal who we are. And then second, he's trying to figure out why is he called a bird, not a cat, because that's what they called other jazz musicians at the time. All right, let's go to paragraph 3. Paragraph 3 is going to be one that intentionally tries to trick you, which is why I wanted you to look at it with me today. So let's read. 2 species won our immediate attention, the goldfinch and the mockingbird. Then I got a dash, but I'm going to pause because I have to make sure I'm comprehending before I get all the way down to here where the sentence ends, or here, I'm sorry, where the sentence ends. I've got to make sure I'm comprehending. 2 species won our immediate attention, the goldfinch and the mockingbird. Remember where they were looking, the field guide to the birds. Okay, not super, super exciting, but we've got to make sure we're comprehending. So the goldfinch, number 1, because the beatnik phrase bird lives, which following Parker's death has been chalked endlessly on village buildings and subway walls, reminds us that during the 13th and 14th centuries, a symbolic goldfinch frequently appeared in European devotional paintings. So I'm not sure where he's going with this. He's just talking about the goldfinch. I want to make sure I get it. So the goldfinch appeared in European devotional paintings. An apocryphal story has it that upon being given a clay bird for a toy, the infant Jesus brought it miraculously to life as a goldfinch. Thus, the small tawny brown bird, with a bright red patch above the base of its bill and a broad yellow band across its wings, became a representative of the soul, the passion, and the sacrifice. I'm not going to get lost into this story that he's telling about the goldfinch. I'm going to get into the goldfinch was a representative of the soul, the passion, the sacrifice. In more worldly late Renaissance art, the little bird became the ambiguous symbol of death and the soul's immortality. Interesting. I'm going to underline that real quick. Symbol of death, soul's immortality. For our own purposes, pause. Our own purposes, I need advanced readers to think, okay, what are our purposes here? Well, the purposes that he set out to prove or to figure out why is Charles Parker Jr. called Bird. That's it. So for our own purposes, however, its song poses a major problem. It is like that of a canary, which soul or no soul rules the goldfinch out. I don't really know what at this point what a canary sounds like. He clearly does. And what he's saying is, okay, the goldfinch is not the answer we're looking for. Thanks. So he just spent this long, it was kind of some random detail, to tell us, okay, out of the two birds that we looked at in the field guide, we don't care about the goldfinch anymore. It's not going to help us. So that's what I want to make sure I understand. I'm going to circle that, just really emphasize goldfinch, not important. And I'm going to annotate. This is about the goldfinch. Boom. I'm ready to move on. All right, we're almost done with this text. And again, I'm taking about 12 minutes. What I want you to just do quickly as advanced readers in 8 or 9 minutes. Let's go ahead and finish. The mockingbird, gives us the Latin, I think is what that is more promising. Okay, good. He's finally ready to go somewhere, right? That's what I'm thinking as a reader. Finally, we're ready to get our answer here. Peterson informs us, don't let that screw you. Who is Peterson? Field guide dude. Peterson informs us that its song, remember tracking pronouns, its, mockingbird, its song consists of long successions of notes and phrases of great variety, with each phrase repeated a half dozen times before going on to the next. You see, we're almost done. You see that this is a pretty dang long sentence. So stick with me. I'm just going to read it. Comprehend with me as I read. Now, remember, the goldfinch is the answer we're looking. I'm sorry, the goldfinch is not the answer we're looking for. The mockingbird is. So before I finish this sentence, we're finally going somewhere with a mockingbird. He's saying, okay, maybe the mockingbird, whatever I'm about to read, can give us some insight into why Parker was called Bird. This is not going to be easy. Let's do it. With each phrase repeated a half dozen times before going on to the next. That the mockingbirds are excellent mimics who adeptly imitate a score of more species found in the neighborhood, and that they frequently sing at night. A description which not only comes close to Parker's way with a saxophone, but even hints at a trait of his character. For although he usually sang at night, his playing was characterized by velocity, by long continued successions of notes and phrases, by swoops, bleeps, echoes, rapidly repeated bebops, rebopped bebops, by mocking mimicry of other jazzman styles, and by interpolations of motifs from extraneous melodies, all of which added up to a dazzling display of wit, satire, burlesque, and pathos. That was a pretty big couple sentences there. I want to talk to you about that before we finish. This is a perfect example of syntax. Syntax is sentence structure. So that's just a term for AP that I want you to know. Syntax is sentence structure. And when I'm doing a rhetorical analysis problem, just a quick side note here. When I'm doing rhetorical analysis, which we're going to start getting into next Tuesday, don't analyze syntax unless you have something to say. Don't analyze syntax unless you think, okay, the author is very deliberately using sentence structure to prove a point. I think that's what's happening here. These two super long, flowy sentences with a lot of detail is paralleling Parker's way with the saxophone. A description which not only comes close to Parker's way with the saxophone, but even hints at a trait of his character. So the syntax mirrors the content. What I mean by that is the syntax is long and flowy and methodical, just like Parker's jazz was. That would be a really cool paragraph to write in a rhetorical analysis essay. So as we're reading multiple choice, the best readers are thinking, what would I say in a rhetorical analysis essay? Because the best readers are thinking, how does the author get his point across or get her point across? Okay, so with that said, we have two really long sentences here. What I'm looking at, Parker was methodical. He sang like a mockingbird. So Parker, I should say, sang and played like a mockingbird. That is what I would annotate. That's all I'm doing. That took me 5 seconds, right? When I'm in the zone, that's what I've got. All right, let's go ahead and finish this, and we'll look at a few questions together tonight. We won't look through every question associated with this passage. But again, I want to focus on, I'm taking 12 minutes on what would take you 8 or 9. Once I have a high-level reading of this text, even if it's not my favorite text ever, I can answer these questions and get a lot of them right. So let's go ahead and finish. Further, he, Parker, was an expert at issuing his improvisations from the dense brush as from the extreme treetops of the harmonic landscape. And there was, without doubt, an irrepressible, a mockery in his personal conduct as in his music. I'm not necessarily going to get every question right now, because I still got to go fast, and there's still going to be ones that are super, super hard. I don't have to get the hardest question on the test right to get a 5. I have to get the majority of these questions right. So keep that in mind. Let's not get lost on the hardest question ever. So here, again, honestly, we're talking about he was an expert at improvising. All right, I am ready to go to the multiple choice questions. Let's go together. If you want to take part in the chat to just say A, B, C, D, E, what do you think? If you have any questions you want me to slow down on, please do. We'll spend just a little bit more time together tonight looking through this. The biggest push I have for you all is to make sure you are using these strategies as you read on your own. So really, this is valuable to look through together, but what's more valuable is that you use these annotation strategies, these time test-taking strategies as you practice on your own. But let's go ahead and look at some questions. The speaker suggests that the primary purpose of the passage is to. If you want to take part in the chat, go ahead and type A, B, C, D, E. What do you think? But again, the best answer, or the best test taker, thinks about the answer before you even look at A, B, C, D, and E. So what is the primary purpose? I'm thinking, okay, the primary purpose is to determine why Parker was called Bird. Now I just got to find the one that best associates with that. Let's use process of elimination. So let's look at them. To analyze the harmonics of jazz. Nope, they're not analyzing jazz. They're discussing, or the author is discussing, why Parker was called Bird. Okay, B, describe the advantages of a methodology. He's not talking about advantages of anything. C, probe for an appropriate association. That's what I'm looking at, because the association is a nickname. And he's trying to figure out, why was he called that? Now, this is what the best test takers do. I'm thinking aloud, but you're going to do this. Boom, boom, maybe. Let's see D and E. Compare jazz music and birdsong. Ooh, this is definitely like fair game. Let's come back to it. Explore the influences of Parker's musical style. Okay, this is definitely about Parker. It's definitely about his musical style, not so much his influences. I'm down to C and D. What is the primary purpose of this passage? Is it to figure out why he's called Bird, or to compare jazz music to birdsong? The best answer here is C. Although this is definitely part of it. The reason why this is incorrect is that's not the primary purpose. The only reason why we're comparing jazz to birdsong is because of the association right here of Parker and his nickname. All right, let's go to 30. These are the type of questions that after a high level reading of the text, you're going to take your best guess on in 15 seconds. Which of the following best describes the tone of the passage? You're probably going to get a tone question 1 time per passage, so 4 or 5 times this year on the real deal, the AP test. Understated modesty. The author's not being modest at all, so if you know what modesty means, boom, cross it out. Mock solemnity. I'll come back to that one. Defensiveness. I'm using process of elimination. Defensiveness means like the author's getting defensive about something. Well, that's not true. Indecisive. I'm actually thinking, was he indecisive here? He talked about two different birds that he read about to try to figure this out. But he's not being indecisive. He's maybe being too long-winded. He's very detailing the goldfinch, only to tell us at the end, nah, wasn't that important. But that's not indecisive. That's just being long-winded and detailed. So he's not going back and forth. He's just explaining what his process was. So it's not indecisive. you know what cynical means, it's not cynical. Cynical is like a sarcastic, negative view of the world. That leaves us with B. All right, the most advanced readers of this passage are going to get B. Let me tell you why. Mock solemnity. If I'm solemn, I'm like, I'm being super serious about something. The reason it's mock, and I'm going back to that same paragraph. He knows, okay, dude, this isn't that serious of a topic. Why this random jazz player, not random, like why this important jazz figure was named Bird. But he's acting like it's like the most important answer ever, and he's going to great lengths of research. He's studying the field guide. He's taking all this on to tell us about a bird that doesn't even matter, he says. So that's why it's mock solemnity. He's being like overly serious to the point where it's almost like mocking how serious he's being. Maybe that's a tough one, but again, take honestly 20 seconds. You either are going to get that or not through process of elimination. All right, let's look at 31. The function of the opening sentence might be best described as, here's what I do. Go back to the opening sentence. Look at my annotations. Come up with what do I think is the correct answer in my own words. And then just plug in place which one of these most aligns to my answer. So the function of the opening sentence. We got to read the opening sentence again. Oddly enough, while several explanations are advanced as to how Charles Parker Jr. became known as Bird, none is conclusive. I underline that. I know that's what I'm talking about. I have a high level reading of this text. Now I have to figure out the function. Well, again, the function that I'm looking at is the first sentence only, is he's telling us the context. So that'd be my answer. He's telling us the context of Charles Parker Jr.'s nickname. Now let's see which one best goes with the answer I already have in my head. Process of elimination. Rebutting an objection. There's no objection here. Definitely not right. Cross it out. Establishing the status of a situation. Maybe. Let's keep going. Dismissing a fallacious claim. A fallacious claim like a logical fallacy, something that's absolutely wrong logically. There's no fallacious claim here. There's nothing logically wrong. I can easily and quickly cross that out. Promoting one theory over another. No, he's not talking about two theories. He's just saying, okay, there's no consensus here about why he's called Bird. He doesn't give us multiple theories. Great, this one isn't too bad. Qualifying a statement. Hopefully you know what qualifying means. So qualifying means to tell that it's sometimes right, but sometimes wrong. For example, while Malcolm X was right with this topic, he was wrong with this topic. That's not what's happening here. We're not qualifying anything. We're not saying sometimes yes, sometimes no. That leaves us with B. So again, process of elimination for the win. Now, the best readers are hopefully saying, okay, this is kind of what I was already thinking. Establishing the situation, the status of a situation. As we walk into this text, this is the situation. Charles Parker has a nickname. We don't know why. That's what's currently happening. We don't know why he was called Bird. There's no consensus here. All right, so B is the best answer. Let's just do one more together. So let me find one that our annotations helped us out on. Let's go to 34. So I'm just skipping a couple for the sake of time. I want to prove to you, like questions like these are going to be the ones where annotations pay off. If I take the time to annotate up front, look how quick this goes. 34. In line 13, failure most directly refers to. All right, go back to my annotations. I was just tracking the text. Read this sentence again. The failure in the exposition of Bird's legend is intriguing. And I drew a line back to what that failure was, not being able to figure out why he was called Yardbird or Bird. That was what was a failure. So I know the answer. Now I just got to find College Board. Like, what is their words that line up with the right answer? I got the right answer in my head. All right, so A, a conspicuous defeat. I'm going to leave that one. I can't throw that out automatically. A personal mistake. I can throw that out automatically. That's definitely not it. So the failure is not a personal mistake. Remember, it's not being able to find consensus as to why he was called Yardbird or Bird. 3, or C, an instance of faulty audience response. Well, that has nothing to do with anything. We haven't talked about faulty audience response. Easy, cross it out. An experience with obstacles? Absolutely not. So we're down to A or E. Let's read E. An inability to ascertain definitively. I'm definitely down to A or B. Or I'm sorry, A or E. Again, I'd rather have you have a 1 in 2 shot, 50-50 coin flip, than a 1 in 5. If I have to take my best guess and move on, I'm feeling decent about this, okay? But I can get this question right. Go back to my annotations. Now, of course, I'm doing this like really quick in the real world if I'm like being timed. I drew a line from failure right here, back here, to none is conclusive. No explanation clearly shows why he was called Yardbird. That's not really a defeat. That's just not like good enough, right? It's an inability to ascertain definitively, good enough, that why he was called Yardbird. So the best answer here is E. Now in the real world, boom, 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 cross, 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 choose my best answer. If I have a high level reading of a text, I can go quickly through these questions. There's a lot of supplemental resources, like practice booklets that you can buy on Amazon or in a bookstore. Here's what I recommend. Read and time yourself reading a lot and hold yourself accountable to the primary purpose and the tone and understanding the nuances of the text. If you do that, that's how I study. It's maybe once a week taking a supplementary focus reading on an AP level. The reason some of those books are solid isn't actually the questions all the time. It's the readings that they have the rights to, that they print, and that you can practice with. And then you own the book. Like, this is just an idea for you if you want to keep pushing yourself. Because I'm not going to spend a lot of time in multiple choice in future live sessions for a little bit. We'll come back to it. But I want you practicing the next couple months without me. Maybe grab an extra text from Amazon, maybe 5 steps to a 5. You can annotate right there. Time yourself. Maybe you can't do what I did today in 12 minutes. I took about 12 minutes. The goal is 8 or 9. Maybe you need all 12 minutes right now. Well, that's not fast enough. The good news, it's September. We have until May. That's why you're here now. That's why you're going to practice all year long. So maybe one extra sample set. If you're like, my teacher's not giving me enough multiple choice practice, go find some. If you're like, hey, my teacher's giving me enough, practice deliberately. You have this. Maybe try to shave 30 seconds off each time. The point of it is this right now. Read at a high level and then worry about time. So just try to shave time off. So I'm really excited that you all are here. And if you're not live with me watching the replay, I know a lot of us are just watching the replays consistently as well. Here's the good news. I'll be here all year and we're going to be working together all year. It's going to be a lot more, hopefully, practical in terms of the essays starting next week. All October, I am focusing on the rhetorical analysis prompt. That prompt, every single year with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, since 2000, has been the lowest scoring essay of AP language. So I'm an AP reader. So the last 5 years, I've flown to Kansas City or Tampa and sat in a big room and graded essays. Some years I read rhetorical analysis. Some years I read synthesis. Some years I read argumentation. Those are 3 essays. No matter what, if I'm reading it or not, rhetorical analysis scores the lowest. It doesn't have to. In fact, I will help you in October to get your scores where you're feeling really confident with rhetorical analysis. Hey, if you can read the text in front of you at a high level, you will get a high score on rhetorical analysis. I will get you some tips and tricks, but really I don't have anything magical. It's all about practicing all year, but I'll be rolling out in process. So next week will be kind of ins and outs of rhetorical analysis. And then in the following weeks in October, I will give you model paragraphs to use as a reference point. What does the reader want to see you write in your rhetorical analysis process? I can give you like an insider's perspective and make sure you're really, really going to be successful this year. All right, so all of my live sessions, all of the live sessions through Fiveable have been free through September. We wanted to get the word out. The replays have been free. However, Fiveable is a paid subscription service. I want to make sure you are rewarded for being here early. So let me take a minute here before we end to tell you how you can make sure to stick with me all year, or to stick with me and other subjects all year. If you're a junior or a senior and you're in multiple AP courses, we have a bundle package for you. This is actually a really good deal. I want you to think about it as an investment. You will never find a better and a cheaper tutoring service. One-on-one tutoring is great, but it's going to be way more expensive than working through me with me through this service. So for $15 for the entire year, if you sign up before October 1st, you get every single replay and live session as much as you want. You can watch the replay once a day if you wanted to. You can watch every replay and every live session once you pay $15 up front for the entire year through May. Now, a lot of people are going to be taking part in Fiveable in April and May and be like, okay, I got to find everything. I'm glad you're here now early on, because